for righteousness to everyone who believes. Whether you're a Jew or a Gentile, whether you're a Catholic or a Protestant, makes no difference. Christ is the end of the law. And then we look at a couple of other epistles of Paul. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 14 to 16. Is there anybody here who has a NIV? A nice large print NIV? Well, let's say a nice NIV anyhow. That's wonderful. Would you be kind enough to bring it up to me? That means you'll actually appear on the video. Think of the excitement of that. All right, I'll read the New King James, which is what I'm reading, but also to this. Don't go away, because I'll get back to you in a little while. All right, just stand there and look spiritual. Okay. Ephesians 2, 14 through 16. For he himself, that's Jesus, is our peace, who has made both one. Who is both? Jew and Gentile. That's right. Has broken down the middle wall of the division between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity. That is the law of commandments contained in ordinances. What did he abolish? The law of commandments contained in ordinances, so as to create in him one man from the two, thus making peace. I don't think we need to read any further. Now, that says that he abolished the law of commandments contained in ordinances. But this translation is so vivid that I want to read it if I can. This is the NIV, beginning at verse 14. For himself is our peace, who has made the two one, and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by abolishing in his flesh the law with its commandments and regulations. Nothing could be clearer than that. He has abolished in his flesh the law with its commandments and regulations. Thank you so much. I might call on you again. So, be a willing volunteer. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm having real problems with the outline. I once had to put one of my wife's shoes on the everything on the, it's a beautiful, it's one of the nicest pulpits I've ever preached on, but everything slides downwards. All right, Colossians, are you with me? Colossians chapter 2, verses 15 through 16. Interesting enough, the same verses, same number as Ephesians. Now this speaks about what God did through the death of Jesus on the cross. And it's in the middle of a sentence. I'd like to read the whole sentence, but I'm being economical of time. Are you with me? Colossians 2:14. Having wiped out the handwriting of requirements that was against us, which was contrary to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross. Having disarmed the principalities and powers of Satan, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them in it. Therefore, because of that, let no one judge you in food or drink, or regarding a festival or a new moon or Sabbath. Notice, application is, therefore, let nobody judge you about the keeping of the law. And that includes the Ten Commandments, because the Sabbath is the fourth of the Ten Commandments. Now, Paul doesn't say don't observe the Sabbath. That's your choice. He says if you don't observe it, don't let anybody judge. That's my answer to my dear Seventh-day Adventist friends. I'm not going to let them judge me in respect of the Sabbath. So you see, it's very clear the death of Jesus has finally and forever set aside the law with its commandments as a means of achieving righteousness to God. Now, if you knew all that was implied, you'd take a deep sigh of relief and say, thank God. Why don't you do that? Thank God. All right. Now then, what are the results of this deliverance? Well, wait a minute. Let's look a little further on in Colossians chapter 2 while we're there. Colossians 2, verse 20 and following. Therefore, if you died with Christ from the basic principles of the world, and that's what Paul has been talking about when he says food or drink or things like that. If you died with Christ from the basic principles of the world, why, as though living in the world, do you subject yourselves to regulations? Do not touch, do not taste, do not handle. Don't you realize, he says, that when Christ died, you died to all that. You're not under all that. So don't subject yourself to it. Let anybody bring you back under it. And then he says about all these regulations, which all concern things which perish with the using, according to the commandments and doctrines of men. These things, indeed, have an appearance of wisdom in self-imposed religion, false humility, and neglect of the body, but are of no value against the indulgence of the flesh. How true that is. The one way to promote lust is to say don't lust. The more you preach against lust and make rules against it, the stronger it becomes. I don't want to offend anybody, but we see this so clearly in Israel. The ultra-Orthodox are just consumed by lust. They're the most dangerous people for young ladies to be alone with. All their rules have just strengthened something inside them. You see what Paul said? The passions of sins which were aroused by the law. He said, if the law hadn't said don't covet or don't lust, I wouldn't have even known what lust was. But when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. See, this is so contrary to the thinking of religious people that we have to spend some time elaborating. Making rules does not make people righteous. A law has never made anybody righteous. The best it can do is restrain sin, but it cannot change human hearts. And let me say this even in regard to the political system. It's good to have good laws in a nation, but don't imagine that making laws will ever change the heart of people. Even the law of Moses couldn't do that, and that was a perfect given law. There has to be another way. Thank God, there is another way. Now let's look briefly at the result of deliverance from the law. If we can say, I, through the law, died to the law, that I might live to God, what will that do for us? I want to suggest to you three things. First of all, it brings freedom from condemnation. Let's look in Romans. Romans is, of course, the main epistle for this whole theme. I'd like to say to you, if you want to be a successful, fruitful Christian, you have to know Romans. There's no substitute. There's no alternative. Romans 8. Well, let me say also that in a certain sense, Romans 8, as I see it, is the goal of Christian living. It's the spirit-controlled life, the life of victory, the life of joy, the life of fruitfulness, the life that pleases God. That's where we'd all like to get. But you can't get to Romans chapter 8 without going to Romans chapters 1 through 7. In the days when people used to make percolated coffee, there are two kinds of coffee, percolated and instant. Instant coffee is one thing, percolated is another, and I've never believed that instant would ever taste like percolated. A lot of Christians want instant Romans chapter 8. But you can't get it. You have to go through the percolator. It's chapters 1-7, and the whole of the 7th chapter, the ultimate goal of the percolator, is releasing the law. You read, there's no other theme in Romans chapter 7 but release from the law. And when you've gone through that, then there is therefore. I'm sure some of you have heard me say, when you find a therefore in the Bible, you want to find out what it's there for. That therefore in Romans 8:1 is because of Romans chapters 1 through 7. When you have been through every stage of the percolator, and the ultimate stage is to realize that you are not under the law, you're delivered from the law, then you can say there is no condemnation. No condemnation. I think